Hi friends, Mindy here. I have a simple process video for you today. I am working in the journal that I created for Paradox Truths in Contrast from Bythewell4god. I'm going to be working on day 8, which is titled Hungry but Satisfied. You can see I had my notes there. I already set those off to the side. I actually pulled out the notes from the previous day also so that I could have a flatter surface to work on here. The fact that I can pull this page out of the journal to work on is just really helpful as my journal gets chunkier as I go along. It's already pretty chunky. And so I added cement tape over here on the right side. This is just a low tack masking tape so that I can make sure that I don't get any stamping or ink over there as I am watercoloring. So pulling out this birch forest stamp. This is a background stamp, and I really feel like this is a pretty versatile stamp actually. You could color the leaves and the background kind of however you wanted to for each of the seasons. Obviously today I will be creating a winter scene. I'm going to be using some blues for the sky, but it's just a really fun stamp set. It's not a repeating stamp, so top to bottom it's not going to line up, but there are ways that you can work around that if you need to extend this stamp. If you were doing on like a page that was really tall even, you could just kind of repeat it, top to bottom, and then add something across the middle of your page, if that makes sense. But there are lots of ways that you could do that. So I'm just adding this to a big acrylic block here. If you don't have an acrylic block like this, you could use some clamshell packaging. You could use, if you have a die cut machine, you could use one of the stamping platforms. You can use a cheap cutting board from the Dollar Tree. Lots of different things that you can do to stamp this if you don't have the right size of stamp set, but you do need a pretty large stamping block. So I am using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm going to be embossing this with clear embossing powder simply for the sake that it's going to make the watercoloring of the background just easier. So I'm just dumping all of that out, and I will dump this excess over here onto this deli paper that I'm working on to protect my surface. I'll put that back obviously into my little jar there, and then I will finish stamping over on the left side, that one little area that doesn't have any trees right there. And so I'm just inking up the left side of my stamp. I did put some paper towel down just in case there was a little residual ink over there. I didn't want anything else being stamped on that page. And then you can see at the top there is a gap and a little bit of a gap down at the bottom where the stamp doesn't completely cover. And this is a 4x6 stamp, so that kind of gives you an idea for the size of my journal. But what I'm going to do is just come in with a micron pen and extend those lines down the side for the top and the bottom. And I did add some of the horizontal lines that you would find in the birch tree as well, just a couple here and there, just to really continue the idea and the pattern behind this stamp. So there were also a couple places where my stamping didn't really turn out very well, so I added the details back in for like the leaves and things. You can see up at the top that my trees now go off the page, and I'm not worried about that there are those few little areas that are not shiny, because obviously the embossing powder makes it shiny, because really it was just the purpose of it was to make it easier to watercolor, and you don't really even notice it, that some of it is pen at this point. So what I am doing is a wet on wet technique. So I'm going through first with clear water into the section that I want to paint, and then I'm adding some watercolor into the area that is wet, and that just helps the watercolor to really bloom and blend and everything. Now, this paper is not watercolor paper. It's not even mixed media paper. This is actually the paper that comes in the traveler's notebooks. And so while it's not a watercolor paper per se, you can watercolor on it, and it does a pretty good job. So I am just making sure to have a good amount of water on here so that when I drop the watercolor in, you can see how it's kind of turning the paper to look like it's gray. That's really just because it's wet. But I'm going to drop that blue in, and it will just help it to blend together. And like I said, if you're using watercolor or mixed media paper, you're going to get more like blooms, and it does blend a little bit easier. But doing it this way, especially because of the paper that it is, really helps so that I don't get those like solid lines of the brush strokes and that kind of stuff. And just helps it to blend a little bit easier when you're doing this wet on wet technique. I'm not going to make you watch me color this entire background, but I did try to be a little bit mindful of, so where the trees are more dense, I have a darker color just because less light would kind of come through there. That was my thinking anyway. Not really too super worried about the shading and all of that here, or the light source or any of that. I'm just dropping in some color back there. I just want a little wintry sky. And as a fun added addition to this, when I was adding some of that embossing powder, some of those granules, because I didn't use an anti-static tool, they did actually stick to the paper, and so they're like white spots in the background, and so it ends up looking like there's little snow or stars or something in the background, which I wish I had thought about it and done it on purpose, but it just kind of randomly back in there. I know you probably can't even see it here on camera, but it was just a fun thing that happened. So I'm going back through now with a really light color of this raw umber. These are the Daniel Smith watercolors that come in the kit. Certainly you could use whatever you have. These are Daniel Smith watercolors, like I said, and so they are highly pigmented, so you're going to add a lot of water, and I just want those leaves to be just very, very light. I did not want to add a lot of color to them. And now I'm coming back in and I'm going to make a kind of grayish brown color, or like a really warm gray. And so I'm using some of the colors from the palette. I'm just keeping all of the colors together. So I added some of the raw umber, some of the Mayan blue, some of the kyanite genuine. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. Anyway, and I'm just going through and mixing those colors together. And then I'm doing a really, adding quite a bit of water to it. And then I'm just taking my water brush here and I'm just very gently tapping underneath each one of these little horizontal lines on the birch tree, just to give it a little bit more dimension and a little bit more color in the background and make it look more, like a tree. It's really hard to see on camera, but I will have a close-up photo at the end of the video if you are interested. And I'm going to pull up that mint tape, and this is kind of where we are for this day. And the page that's going to be opposite this one is that kind of like, it almost looks like a frozen lake, or to me that's kind of what it looks like. So but I need to kind of pull these pages together a little bit better because I have so much, the blue over on the left is just really bright. So I'm going to use that label that has one of the verses for this day over on the left side to kind of help balance that a little bit. And I'm really trying to figure out where I want my notes to go. And really a lot of this is just kind of how I want the colors to balance between the two pages. And I did take the sticker for this day, the title starter, and I actually added that to some white scrap paper that I had, just so that you could be able to read it easier across all of those trees. So that's just what's sitting up there. I haven't even glued it down at this point. And then I thought it would be fun to take the texture from the kit this month, which was some vellum, and I'm going to cut this down and make a pocket so that you can kind of still see that background, but you also have that soft look to that. So just pulled out my trimmer and cut this down, and it just is going to fit perfectly right here on this page, and you can kind of see how that's going to work. I'm just kind of testing everything out just to see where I want. And I decided I really want a few more notes over on the left side, so I need to make my my little label there. I'm going to actually make that into a piece that I can make a tuck spot. So I'm adding a couple of pieces of the die cuts here. I did try to test some different things out to see, but I couldn't wrap my brain around adding the flowers to the tree. Anyway, that's just how my brain works. So I pulled out one of the little pine cones and then just kind of a sprig of leaves to really kind of pull that green over across to the left side. And I'm just going to make a little cluster out of these guys here that is going to end up being a little tuck spot for my flashcards. So I did have this green piece in front, the greenery, and I liked that, and then I ended up changing it after I had it glued down. So I'm just going to glue along that left side and along the bottom, and I'm just basically creating a little pocket out of this label. I just added those other pieces on the left to make it just a little bit bigger and to give even, just a little bit more security for my little flashcards that I'm going to be tucking in there. And you can kind of see I'm gluing those pieces together, and then my flashcards will tuck down behind there. I'm going to add my title starter up here across the trees, and that really kind of helps it so you don't even really see where the ending of the stamping is and the beginning of my hand drawing. You can't really even tell that line because that label kind of goes across the top of it. So I added a couple flashcards over there, and then I'm going to glue down my pocket. And I am going to use wet glue. Sometimes when you use wet glue on vellum, it can cause it to curl. But if you do a really small sparing amount on it, you can get it on there without that doing. So you can see right at the edge of this vellum, I'm adding the glue, very, very thin little amount. And I didn't have it curl at all. So I just very gently kind of tapped it into place. That's the great thing about art glitter glue, is it dries really quickly. It just kind of grabs on there, and you can't really even see the marks of the glue that way. So now I'm going to add just a little bit of color from kind of trying to bring those blues now over to the right hand side. So I'm using a couple of the clear stickers here, which I love these little towns. I think they are so stinking cute. But this one had a tree on the left, and I just didn't want it next to the tree that was already on there. So I'm just going to cut off that little section of the stamp and then continue my little village over here on the right side, and then trim off the excess so it looks like there's just like a little city street over there. And I just think those houses are so cute. I love them. So I did have a little bit of the stickers hanging off the bottom as well, so I trimmed that, and then that will end up being the pocket that holds the rest of my journaling cards. So I'm just going to figure out which way I want these to go. I have this one that's got some scriptures on there, some other notes, and just kind of trying to get everything balanced out. So that's it for today for me. If you liked this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Consider joining my Facebook group. I'll have all that linked in the description. And until next time, bye.